Now, listen, I've got to say something, right? I saw something. This is what triggered me. I think it was last night, and I was arguing with these people for fucking ages. Now, there was a clip of John Lennon. I haven't seen it before. Oh, hello, Sharon, in chorus of Lady Marmalade, or Marmalade, as we call it in England. And there were people in the comments saying, what a genius. I never knew he could play the piano. Oh, didn't you know that he could write music? He could do this. And there was so much bullshit. And I kept correcting everybody. And I just thought, well, in fact, other people also said, no, he's just banging keys. He couldn't write music. He didn't go to music school. He went to art school and he dropped out after about 3 seconds. Blah, blah, blah. And you know, I had to keep correcting people about it, but I don't even think these people are sort of new generation people. I just think they're people who heard back in the 80s or 90s, oh, John Lennon, man of peace, blah, 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 and didn't know anything else about him. I mean, we know a lot better nowadays about John Lennon, don't we? So I'm going to remind everybody about John Lennon, and I'm going to dig him a fucking big hole, which he won't be able to get out of ever. So let's have a little bit of Madonna while we're building up to that. Where's my notepad? It's called The Genius of John Lennon. Okay. So, first of all, let's destroy some myths. John Lennon was not born during a bombing raid on Liverpool. That never happened. Right. John Lennon was not a middle-class person. Point 3. John Lennon's mother and father were low-life scum. Point 4. I haven't got these numbered, by the way, so I've just got little stars by them. Right? Star. His Aunt Mimi fucked the lodger half her age, so all this like prim and proper Aunt Mimi is bullshit. She was just as bad as her fucking sister. Star. There was never a choice of John Lennon going with his dad to New Zealand because his dad wouldn't have been accepted by immigration to New Zealand. Simple as that. It's bullshit. It's a bullshit story. Right. Star. John Lennon was a hopeless student at school. He didn't get any qualifications. He left an idiot. Star. He got into art college because it was a dummy course. It was about the lowest thing you could do. This was a time when everybody could be something in Britain. You know, you could be a working class person. You could rise up. I mean, look at George Martin. He was a working class piece of shit, but chose the right course after national service and did what he wanted to do. And you could do that in England at the time. There was space for this sort of thing. At art college, he only lasted a few weeks, and as you can see, he wasn't an artist. He if you want to put his artistic skills down to somebody similar, I'd put him down to a retarded 5-year-old's artistic skills. And come on, let's face it, it's not the raft of the Medusa, is it? Come on, or the Mona Lisa. There's no shortcuts with art. I'm telling you, there's no shortcuts with art. And there's no shortcuts with proper music. By the way, John Lennon couldn't read music. None of the Beatles could read music. He wasn't musically gifted. He couldn't play any musical instrument effectively. There you go. Okay, let's talk about the drugs. He was hooked on amphetamines at the age of 21, which is an upper, which makes you quite aggressive, even if you're as skinny as a rake. Star. He was hooked on marijuana by the age of 24. Star. Actually, yeah, that's probably the most honest painting we ever saw was that Walls and Bridges one that he did. He copied. I mean, it's obviously copied from a photograph from a Wild West film or something like that. Well, we can all copy stuff, and that's what he did all his life. He copied stuff. So where was we? We were through the drugs. So he was hooked on marijuana by the age of 24. Star. He was hooked on LSD, age 26. Star. He was a heroin addict at the age of 28, thanks to Yoko. Star. He was a coke snorting, annoying lunatic, age 31. Star. For the remainder of his life, he combined all the drugs, which is why he's erratic in all of his interviews, and his nose was collapsing. Did you get that? His nose was collapsing. Star. He was a traitor to his country, a supporter of any hopeless cause, mostly in an effort to shock. Star. A man who was lauded as a peace-loving progressive, and a year later was a supporter of murderers and terrorism, and then totally shut up to try and beg for a green card. Hypocrisy. Okay. Star. A man who sucked up to America just to be in a city where heroin use was acceptable and easy to procure. Star. A man who thought nothing of violence towards women and professed the opposite. Star. A man who supported Black Panther terrorism and then wrote a song which was immediately banned for racism, coming up with a scrap of paper from a junkie friend which seemed to excuse it, and quoting an Irish Republican from 1916 who he couldn't even get the name right of. Star. A man whose solo output was bitter and childish, insults his more talented former songwriting partner. Star. A man whose solo output was littered with dull, unoriginal, and often plagiarized material. Star. A narcissist who was already forgotten in the charts by 1972. Star. A man who called his partner mother. A terrible insult to women, unless a greedy nobody also posing as a musician and an artist. Star. A man who never said anything important about peace, but branded the word about with no intellect or answer. Star. A man who never matured, but grew more pathetic with age. Star. A man who rarely left his bedroom in 5 years, hiding in the Dakota, watching TV, snorting coke, battling with heroin and smoking weed to come down, and masturbating furiously whilst Yoko lived a separate life with different men in the same apartment. Star. A man who desperately tried to be relevant but knew he wasn't. Star. A man forgotten musically by 1974 when his final original album bombed. Star. A man whose rock and roll album was his final nail in the coffin. Star. A man who never wrote a song in 5 years bar some generic crap which later became 2 Beatles songs. Star. A son that was not miraculously born on his birthday, but was physically induced to arrive on that day. Star. A man who was hiding from the world in embarrassment. Star. A man whose 77 solo tracks have been milked dry in countless best of collections. Star. The most talented genius who was ever born. Star. A liar, a bully of women, a fantasist, a man who was not in the slightest bit intellectual and seemed to get any inspiration from whatever TV shows were popular at the time. Star. He appeared on the old grey whistle test because he couldn't get on top of the pops. Star. He never saved the yacht in a storm on his trip to Bermuda. The skipper, sick or well, wouldn't trust a man as skinny as a stick with the navigation equipment of an expensive boat. It was on autopilot, but John was probably allowed to spin the wheel, which would have been disengaged whilst the skipper was busy. I mean, that's obvious. Star. He was too embarrassed to return to Britain. He was forgotten by the time he was shot. in his own country, by the way. Star. Double Fantasy barely made the lower end of the charts and was diving back out when he was shot, as was the single. Star. The interviews he made before his death were controlled by Yoko, making sure nobody saw his physical state, the physical state he was in, as he was ravaged by drugs, which he was also very concerned about. Star. The narrative of the bread baking stay-at-home dad was Yoko-inspired lie to hide what really happened in those 5 years of nothing. Star. Mark Chapman actually saved not only Lennon's career, but helped George, Ringo, and Paul's fading careers, and also sparked a massive interest in the Beatles. Star. Mark Chapman was correct when he called Lennon a phony. Star. Mark Chapman has been behind bars for 43 years. In the UK, murderers generally serve 15 years. Yoko was institutionalized in a mental hospital in her late teens. She has the artistic skills of a 2-year-old. She is a fraud who used prostitution and her race to get her foot in the door. Star. Yoko only had a musical career because John was part owner of Apple and she climbed on John's skinny back to continue this myth of talent. Star. Yoko manipulated John and lived off his Beatle cash to this day. 1 minute trying to shock and the next trying to show John as a saint. Star. John's whole family have lied to make money from his memory, from talentless sons to sponging half-siblings who never even knew him. Star. John is only a legend because he was shot and otherwise would have been seen as a desperately sad Beatle. And there would have been a Beatles reunion by 1983. And all I can say, in 1979, when I was really big on the Beatles, I didn't even know all the Beatles' names. I knew Ringo and Paul. And I had to ask my mum, because like I said, oh, the one with the glasses on Sergeant Pepper looks cool. And she goes, oh, he's a horrible bloke. And he was a pervert. And that's what she said before he died. And that's all I remember knowing about John Lennon before he actually died. So there you go. There we are. And that's about it for John Lennon. And there's a lot more. But, you know,